Russia appears to be in full-on cope mode as Indian factories turn out thousands of shells for the Ukrainian armed forces. Just what happened to Russia's growing alliance with India? And is this another case study in India playing both sides to come out on top? I'm Paul, U.S. Army combat veteran. Let's talk about it. Okay, so Russia's big mad because Indian shells are flowing to Ukraine. This is coming from Reuters, who generally does excellent reporting, and they're citing customs data showing that nearly a dozen, also a dozen Indian and European government and defense officials all confirming that Indian factories are churning out Ukrainian artillery shells. And though this is interesting because we saw recently Putin had a very prominent visit to India where they announced a large number of initiatives, and it looked like India was happy to take Russia's money and engage in a level of bilateral trade. This, of course, made the United States pretty mad because they view India as an important ally and a regional balance against China. So the fact that India felt it had more to gain by dealing with Russia than with its Western allies was itself pretty problematic. Now, what India said is they have not sent or sold artillery shells to Ukraine directly, but that New Delhi has not taken any action to slow the supply to European countries who purchase them. And then the European countries do what they want to Ukraine. Right. It's their property then. They can send it anywhere they want. And this has been happening for over a year. But again, these Indian officials probably trying to keep it on the down low as to not disrupt the high levels of deal making taking place within the Kremlin. Right. Of course, the Kremlin has raised the issue on at least two occasions, including during July. But other sources have reported that India is only producing a small fraction of the total ammunition being used by Ukraine. It's under 1% of total arms imported by Kiev, but that is actually still quite a bit. Again, Indian rounds, remember, artillery shells probably only make up 10% of those total arms imports. And of those, if India was producing a tenth of one in every 10 rounds that Ukraine fires, that's still a significant contribution. And of course, Reuters doesn't know for sure if these Indian rounds are part of the resale or the Czechia-led sort of artillery purchasing plan, but it makes sense, right? Economically, India is a huge population center, but they don't have China's manufacturing capabilities. But the price of artillery shells globally has been so high for so long that, frankly, India would be crazy not to churn out as many artillery shells as it possibly can. And as you guys probably know, in a lot of countries, being a manufacturing hub for a war can often jumpstart a larger manufacturing boom. The U.S. saw this during the Second World War when it sort of pivoted from manufacturing war material and then transitioned into manufacturing a lot of peacetime material. There were some other factors, I know, but I think this is something that India has aspired to do for a long time, and it sounds like perhaps they're realizing that supporting the Western economies in at least some of these capacities might actually be more valuable than supporting Russia. Now, before we talk about the other side of the coin, Russia's source for artillery shells, sounds like things aren't going nearly as well. I want to mention that if you are interested in supporting this channel, you guys know that I'm 100% independent. I don't take money from governments. I don't take money from media companies like some influencers, but people I rely on to support me are you guys, the audience. And that's why I need you to become a member at combatvetnews.com. You can see we've got our different tiers. This works just like Patreon, right? Twice a week, I drop uncensored combat footage analysis, the uncensored stuff that YouTube will not let me show you, GoPro combat footage, drone footage, really deep dives. We also have, of course, the higher tiers that get you access to things like the Q&A or the by name shout outs or recognition at the end of videos. So check us out at combatvetnews.com. Now, for North Korea, this is where Russia has gotten a lot of their shells. The U.S. is cracking down. They've identified a bunch of Russian individuals and companies engaging in prohibited transactions with North Korea. And they are cracking down, adding 5 names and 1 individual in violation of North Korean sanctions. Now, this is something, again, where Russia and North Korea have deepened their military and political cooperation. To be clear, North Korea is not really going to be damaged by U.S. sanctions because we don't do any business with North Korea. But Russia may be, right? There's still some Russian trade that happens. Particularly the U.S. announcing sanctions on a Russian state-owned airline that might be partially responsible for transferring North Korean ballistic missiles to Russia. And one of the most interesting targets is the MRB Bank, the International Settlement Bank, one of the entities that was violating these sanctions. This is interesting because this is part of a larger crackdown by the United States on these international trade settlement banks. And it implies that, again, highly likely that this is actually being settled in the yuan because North Korea's economy is just centralized. It's centrally controlled. And so there is no private enterprise in North Korea. There might be some limited like for-profit enterprises, but there's nothing that we would consider like a capital-based free market. And so this International Settlement Bank is again transferring funds from Russian entities and facilitating purchases by Russia of North Korean goods and hardware. Right. And by cracking down on this, they're really making it a lot harder to make the sale of goods and services worthwhile. Of course, they acknowledge that this bank is used to finance North Korea's weapons of mass destruction, its nuclear program, and its ballistic missile program. So not a great day to be a North Korean, or at least a North Korean trader. More like traitor, right? Oh, I got buns today. All right, guys. Thanks to our Colonel tier members like Bill Collier, Robin Colburn, Guyers Martin, Eugenia Cuesta, Chris Gorsuch, Fran Sicarius, AL90, and Pecha Tororu, as well as all of our Lieutenant tier members. You guys are the ones who make this whole thing possible. But also, if you just want to subscribe, that's free, and it does make a difference to the channel. And I'll see you guys over on Combat Vet News tomorrow. Cheers.